Have you also been a victim, frankly, of too many pesky calls, messages offering you everything from personal loans, insurance, real estate products, sometimes jobs also where you can apparently make tons of money sitting at home, and you've not signed up for any of these services? Open your phone's messaging service and tell me if you can really find your own messages, or is it flooded with unwanted information and soliciting your interest in their various products and services. Well, someone has to put a stop to it, and TRAI is trying to. Their latest move just may have some good news. They've asked the telecom operators to bar unregistered marketers. The objective is to improve efficiency of telecom infrastructure while protecting mobile phone users from unregulated marketers. But is TRAI's directive really going to help this menace? Because they have tried to do this in various ways before. Let's speak on that ahead on the show, but let me first go across to my colleague Sumita, who's breaking down the details of what TRAI has said.
Like me, are you somebody who's also bothered by these pesky calls and messages by telemarketers who are hounding you every day with 30 to 40 messages per day? Well, then I have some good news for you, because the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, which has been having meetings with telecom providers and brands, has come out with a directive and is in a mood to ban, to regulate all of these unauthorized telemarketers. So what's it saying? Well, a couple of directives and messages have been issued. Number one, all promotional messages must be sent through registered telemarketers only. So they want to have a formal channel for all of these promotional messages, telemarketing messages, and of course only approved templates should be used in promotional messages. Headers and templated messages are currently being misused by telemarketers. So what it also says, that all telemarketers sending you messages with 10-digit numbers will all be banned, and telecom service providers will have to make sure that all of these directives are followed, and they have to comply. Any orders that come from the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India to all of these companies, they have to be complied within 30 days. So really the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India really cracking down on these unauthorized telemarketer messages, and now these companies will have to follow, will have to abide by these rules in 30 days only. But how much of this will be able to rectify the problem of unsolicited messages, pesky messages? Well, for that we'll need to wait and watch.
Well, definitely we need to wait and watch, because like I said, this is not the first time that TRAI has done this. Just a quick sort of context to it. To cut down the menace of these calls, the TRAI has actually set up a platform, and anyone who wants to send you messages or calls has to register on this platform as a telemarketer. What TRAI is saying today is the telecom operators who run the mobile services you get have to go back and re-verify everyone who is registered on this platform, remove anyone who is not verified at all, and they have to do all of this within 30 days. That's the DLT platform that I'm talking about. That's the only one that's allowed. Furthermore, anyone who's reaching out to you through a 10-digit number will be barred. Sachin Taparia, founder of Local Circles, with me on the show. R. Chandrasekhar, former telecom secretary, joining us today. S.N. Gupta, ex-principal advisor of the TRAI, speaking with us, as is Rekha Agarwal, advocate in the Supreme Court. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us today. Mr. Chandrasekhar, let me begin by getting your take, and if you can just also help us communicate to the viewers, to explain to the viewers how this is exactly going to help. Because the language that TRAI has used is pretty technical. They're talking about re-verifying specific headers, etc. Is this going to stop those pesky calls or not?
Well, first and foremost, Tamanna, I want to say that this is not about calls. This is about messages only. So calls is a different cup of tea altogether. And I don't think that this direction has anything to do with regard to the calls. But as far as messages are concerned, yes, it would help to a certain extent to control the menace. But I think we need to be clear as to what can be accomplished through this instruction. The first is that getting messages from, either unverified telemarketers or, people who mimic a very legitimate site or a legitimate agency, say a bank or an insurance company or something like that, which have a name which is very similar. So a lot of these kinds of, I don't know what to call it, ambush advertising or whatever, are used sometimes for purposes of fraud or to catch an unwary customer and give an impression that they are calling from some agency. Now, that may be just for some innocent, although irritating marketing, or it may be for something far more insidious, like a fraud or hoodwinking somebody. So that, I think, to a significant extent, would get controlled through this mechanism, and using the platform, the DLT platform, the distributed ledger technology platform, where only verified agencies could go, and they are all part of a chain of trust which is built. So you know that the call that you are getting is from who it, the message that you are getting is from who it appears to be. However, I think that getting messages may not be completely, getting fraudulent messages and spoofing kind of messages may be controlled, but getting messages as such may not get controlled, because ultimately the choice had been given to the user earlier. And we all saw that when the option was given, it was a little difficult to specify which kind of messages you wanted and which kind of messages you didn't want, even if the categories were specified. So I think it's a more complex problem. Yes, this is one step. One shouldn't look at this as a silver bullet or a magic solution to all the problems of messaging that we have. The one, slightly tricky part that I would like to draw your attention to is part C, which talks about ensuring that the content does not have the flexibility to insert undesired content. Now, that is a bit of a question as to A, who decides what is undesired, and B, who is responsible if that undesired content is injected. Is it something that the telemarketer themselves are responsible for? And if so, what do they need to do? Those are some of the things which I think time will tell.
Okay,
how
so there are
effective
three
that is.
parties to this entire situation, right? There are three sort of stakeholders. One is the end user, who's getting all of these messages and calls. Then there is TRAI, who's supposed to ensure it's not happening. And then there's the telecom operator. Of course, the sender of the information wants to make sure that their messaging is reached. Mr. Gupta, this doesn't seem to be much more than virtuous signaling at this point, based on what Mr. Chandrasekhar is saying. Because even the 10-digit numbers that they're saying are going to be barred, is it just for messages? What about the many calls that people keep getting, the spam calls?
Yeah, thank you, Tamanna ji, and good afternoon, Chandrasekhar Sir. My senior is there. He has almost said it all, but I will also like to clarify what Sumiti mentioned, that calls and messages. As Chandrasekhar Saab has mentioned, the today's directive, what we are talking, 1 month time to the operators to implement it, is only for messages, means SMS kind of thing, not for the calls, today's directive. But that does not mean TRAI have not issued the directives for calls. And it goes 4 years back, actually. 2018, they issued a directive combined for calls as well as SMSs, and by using this DLT platform, DLT basically is blockchain, actually, the blockchain, because, and that was a pioneering effort by Indian regulator, because first time in the world they were trying to solve this problem by using the blockchain, which claims to solve any problem you have. And so, and here, Tamanna ji, what you mentioned, the DLT platform set up by TRAI, that is also not a fact. Actually, they directed the operator to set up a platform or make use of DLT as a technology. And the regulatory burden was passed on to the operator. Actually, they had to basically invest in that. And it is a very, very complex problem, as Chandrasekhar Saab has mentioned, needs a lot of capex, actually, infrastructure. The DLT platform is easier said than done, but it has a promise to solve all the problems. not only messages, but even for calls.
Mr.
But
Gupta,
what
just a
has
minute, sir. If
happened-
you're saying that pesky call directives have been given before by TRAI, how has it helped? And who has it helped?
Yes,
and how
yes.
will
So
this help?
Yeah, that is what Tamanna ji, when they issued this directive 4 years back, so
Yeah.
it helped only 1/4 of this actually. First, because the directive was for calls and SMS, so it helped for SMS, and that also those telemarketer who got registered in that registry, because those who were not registered, uh, they were not even tapped, or they were not even recognized, because they were using 10-digit number. And even now, so that is where the 10-digit number thing comes. If you are registered, then you are given a template or a header or a short code kind of thing. So that is why TRA today have told them ki whosoever is using 10-digit number, straightway block them. So that will be done.
Number
So
on the DLT. Mr. Gupta, 10-digit
yeah,
number on the DLT.
yes, on the DLT, yes.
So it's not
because
going to stop.
now
So
in any
Sachin
case,
Taparia,
directive is for DLT, so DLT have to be used.
okay,
That
so
has become a
Sachin
law
Taparia,
now.
this comes just days after your survey shows how many people are actually being plagued by these pesky calls. So if someone thinks it's just them suffering, it's definitely not. It's a widespread issue. But the TRAI seems to be focusing only on the technology for messages right now. And frankly, even with those messages, even with verified registered marketers, suppose you have registered with a service, say your bank, because you want to get a notification when there is any change in your account balance. That's not stopping from the bank from pushing through vague promotional stuff on that same platform, which you don't want. You just want the information. Who's stopping that?
So absolutely, Tamanna. So in May of 2022, we initiated a survey on pesky messages, which we then subsequently escalated to TRAI last year. And there, again, 2 in 3 citizens basically said that they are getting 4 or more pesky SMS messages every day. So it is that bad. Pesky calls is a different, animal altogether. So pesky messages, we believe that the new, order that has come from TRAI will help in that direction. However, as I think Chandrasekhar ji said earlier, the ability also needs to be implemented for users. With one click, they should have the ability to actually mark a message spam. That does not exist today. Today, if as a user you want to mark something spam, it's a whole process. You have to send an SMS in a set format, which goes to TRAI, and nobody is going to be able to know that process, know that number, save that number, and mark something spam. So I think for any of this to be effective, you really need a good feedback mechanism. The operators need it, the TRAI needs it, for something like this to be successful. Yes, on the supply side with this DLT platform, the pesky messages should reduce, because anybody who is, unauthorized basically cannot, register, and therefore the operators will basically stop them from sending those messages. But unregistered messages, again, through similar looking type of handles, could still come to people. So that's your pesky message, issue. The survey that we just, escalated to TRAI 3 days back was on pesky calls, which is a whole different menace.
Yes, but Sachin,
and I think
I'm trying to understand why pesky calls have still not been addressed. There was a DND sort of registry. Why has that not worked? Do people not know how to go on to it? Why has that entire system sort of collapsed? It's a free-for-all, frankly. And the fact that wherever you go, even if you want to buy a stick of gum, they will ask for your mobile number to bill you.
Absolutely. So this issue, Tamanna, is a bit more complicated, and we really did a long consultation on this with people, learning about their experiences. And the net of it is that 50% people are saying that these spam calls actually don't come from corporate or company numbers, but numbers that are registered to individuals. These guys are not in any of the DLT system, not registered as telemarketers, right? And we went to the next level. Apparently, what's happening is many of the companies, who have sales managers basically use these outside agencies or contractors or home-based workers to go register a mobile number on their personal name and then use that number. They are given a list to call you and me and everybody else. They are given a list to go call people, right? And because they are not going through any telemarketer registration, nothing, it's just an individual calling another individual. And to address this menace, what you really need is a centralized system where I, as a user, mark somebody as a spam caller or a pesky caller. And when enough of us do, let's say 5 of us mark that same number as a spam caller within, a matter of few hours, then the operator needs to start acting and basically blacklist or start with, barring any outbound calls on that particular number for, let's say, 24 hours. On the second offense, you look at something like, barring for a week, right? And then eventually you'll have to take it to the Aadhaar number of the individual and start tagging the Aadhaar number to then
Wasn't
basically,
there a fine? No, wasn't there a fine that TRAI had put into place for unwanted calls? What happened to that fine? How many people have been fined? None of these details have really come to the fore.
Absolutely. And that itself, the whole idea of a fine, who do you fine? It's coming from an individual to another individual. Who would you fine? Fine the operator? Would you fine, that particular number? Well, people will go to the next operator and get another SIM card, right? So therefore TRAI needs to really kind of, get at the forefront of this, design this system. It's almost like a true caller type of system, except that it's managed by the government. And all the operators are integrated into
You have to stop it at the source. Rekha Agarwal, from the consumer's point of view, irritation, waste of your time, all of these are, of course, grave concerns. But this is also the gateway to frauds, to phishing scams. People are actually being defrauded because of some of these messages. Remember the whole you haven't paid your electricity bill fraud that was taking place a few months ago?
Yes. So, Tamanna, what I'd say over here that, as a consumer, from the perspective of the consumer, every consumer is entitled to value for money. That is the basic, fundamental protection that every consumer has under the law, under the Consumer Protection Act of 2019. And even the 1986 Act had made provisions for that. And the 2019 Act is even more detailed. So I think that I welcome the steps, which have been taken by the TRAI. And as you just said yourself, that even in the past, such steps had been, such directions had been issued. But how successful they were or were they not, that is there for all of us to see. But I think I would like to be more positive over here. And the fact that there is a deadline of 30 days, which is a very short time, I would say, for the stakeholders to get their act ready. So I think that first of all, the penalty, for what happens to those people who do not follow the directives of the TRAI, there should be a very crystal clear penalty clause for that. And as to what is the remedy for a consumer who still gets, hounded by such kind of obnoxious calls and messages, because the DND, strategy did not work in the past. And despite the fact that the consumer courts also were very clear about this, that a consumer has a right to complain to the authorities for deficiency in service as well as for unfair trade practice. So I think that this kind of surrogate, advertising, this kind of insidious marketing, which Mr. Shekhar also spoke about, that needs to be curbed. Every consumer, has a right, a fundamental right to enjoy the services for which he has paid. He needs value for money. And at the same time, there is a certain dignity attached to the whole thing, which is right to privacy. So you don't want to your personal space, your peace of mind, while you're at home or while you're at work, to be invaded by such kind of messages, and particularly the calls.
Kaji, we have crossed that limit. If I open
Yes.
my message folder right now, I can
Yes.
only see advertisements.
Yes.
And over the last
So
few
those need to
days,
be curbed.
because it happened to be Valentine's Day, it was like an attack.
Yes. Oh God. It was disgusting. It was
like
absolutely
an attack
disgusting.
for me to buy things. I want
yes,
to understand, Mr. Chandrasekhar, I want to understand the failure of curbing all of this over the last many years. I mean, we are going into those technicalities of what exactly the TRAI said today. It's only for messages, only for 10-digit messages. The fact is, as a user, I'm suffering. Who is doing anything about that?
Right. No, so Tamanna, I think we all know the problem and we all face it. So it's, I think all of us know the problem pretty well. But this is a bit like a Hydra monster, and I do have some sympathy with TRAI in their not entirely successful, to put it, mildly, in curbing this. But I think we need to understand, first of all, that in our country, there are lots of people who have a mobile phone, lots of time, and can do with a little extra income. So it's not difficult for anybody to actually, rustle up a few hundreds, a few thousands, or maybe even more of such people to do the marketing on their behalf. One thing which was tried in the past, if I may recall, was to say that you put a limit on the number of calls, so that if that single number, if it's a telemarketer making calls, for example, then you say, okay, if you make more than 100 calls in a day or more than 200 calls in a day, then you are a telemarketer and automatically you get blocked. But that ran into problems because there are some genuine callers with digititis who keep calling their own friends 300, 400 times a day and don't want to be blocked because they haven't done any telemarketing, but they are just calling some friend or the other all the time. So I think the problem is in distinguishing, between all of these different elements. The second thing is when you're looking at messages, you yourself in the example that you gave of the bank brought out the fact that it is not always the caller who is a spammer. The caller may have a mix of genuine messages like a bank alerting you about, some change to your balance. But the same institution may be actually spamming you with all their promotional messages saying,
But then they shouldn't, should they? They shouldn't, because I
well,
didn't ask for their new offers.
Yes. So the question is, how do you actually create categories of messages, categories of messengers in such a way that the recipients can usefully say, I don't want this and I want this. Right now, I think that has proved to be a bigger problem. So implementing it through technology is one part of the story. But I think the underlying problem is the more complex one, which is how do you categorize these messages? How do you enable users to make the kind of choices that we want them to be able to make? How do you enable user feedback at the click of a button, as Sachin was just saying, so that you get at least some kind of almost a social media poll saying that this number is a spamming number. But one can always get another number and start the same story all over again. So I think that is the more logical part of the problem, which is still eluding a solution. And I think that is the problem which has to be solved.
Yeah.
One more point I want to mention before I close, and that is that what we consider as a spam when we are in the middle of something may actually be a useful message when I'm a little more free time. I want to know about certain insurance package which is available to me, but not when I'm in the middle of something. So even the definition of a spam for a person can vary. So ultimately,
but just my response to that, and unfortunately, this is what I say to a lot of telemarketers as well, that if I want a personal loan, I will go on your website and I will get it. I'm not sitting here waiting for a personal loan that someone will call me and grant me one.
Yes.
Like a magic wish.
So yes, but you have the option of blocking. You have the option of blocking the
entire category. It will take my entire day to track them down. It's just the volume is too much. Yes, Rekha Agarwal wanted to come in. It's a losing battle, isn't it?
In fact, I just wanted to ask the other speakers who are more technically, having knowledge of this subject, that is it not possible to screen those messages? Just registration is not enough. If the telemarketer, submits the kind of messages which he wants to, send to the customers, and then they could be screened and put into certain categories. But yes, I fully appreciate what Mr. Shekhar said, or that a particular message may be a spam for one person, it may not be spam for the other person. So there's going to be overlapping, and it will be very difficult to categorize.
All right. So there is a lot more to be done. Maybe this is just a drop in the ocean. I hope TRAI can come out with clearer ideas and actually implement some of the ideas. One of their ideas was to have a Truecaller type of an app or software that will help people identify calls that they don't want. There was supposed to be fines on pesky callers. Can we see some examples of that? A lot more needs to be done because this is truly becoming a menace. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us this evening on the show. We'll take a very short break, but stay tuned. A lot more coming up on the other side.
We're going to look